こんにちは皆さん、テリチャンネルのテリです。いつも動画を見てくれてありがとう。今日はですね、当時アメリカの大統領だったオバマさんのスピーチを聞いていきます。私は戦争が経験した、そして日本に行った時、広島も行きました。広島のビデオは日曜日で私のもう一つのチャンネルでアップロードしますので、よかったら見てください。では見ていきましょう。はい、皆さん始まります。OK。
71 years ago,
これ心臓安倍さんです
on a
が、ゆ
bright,
っくり休んでください。
cloudless morning, death fell from the sky and the world was changed. A flash of light and a wall of fire destroyed a city and demonstrated that mankind possessed the means to destroy itself. Why do we come to this place? To Hiroshima. We come to ponder a terrible force unleashed in a not so distant past. We come to mourn the dead, including over 100,000 Japanese men, women, and children. Thousands of Koreans, a dozen Americans held prisoner. It is not the fact of war that sets Hiroshima apart. Artifacts tell us that violent conflict appeared with the very first man. Our early ancestors, having learned to make blades from flint and spears from wood, used these tools not just for hunting, but against their own kind. On every continent, the history of civilization is filled with war, whether driven by scarcity of grain or hunger for gold,
めっちゃ確かにこれ
compelled by nationalist fervor or religious zeal. Empires have risen and fallen. Peoples have been subjugated and liberated. And at each junction, innocents have suffered
It's always like
a
that.
countless toll, their names forgotten by time. The world war that reached its brutal end in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was fought among the wealthiest and most powerful of nations. In the span of a few years, some 60 million people would die.
めっちゃいっぱいですね、こ
Men, women,
れ。
children.
Children.
No different than us. Shot, beaten, marched, bombed, jailed, starved,
痛そうなですです。
gassed to death. Science allows us to communicate across the seas and fly above the clouds, to cure disease and understand the cosmos. But those same discoveries can be turned into ever more efficient killing machines. The wars of the modern age teach us this truth. Hiroshima teaches this truth. We stand here in the middle of this city and force ourselves to imagine the moment the bomb fell.
めっちゃ大変だった、確かに。大変だったと思う。
We force ourselves to feel the dread of children confused by what they see.
いやー、めっちゃ悪かった。
We listen to a silent cry. We remember all the innocents killed across the arc of that terrible war and the wars that came before and the wars that would follow. Mere words cannot give voice to such suffering. But we have a shared responsibility to look directly into the eye of history and ask what we must do differently to curb such suffering again. Someday, the voices of the Hibakusha will no longer be with us to bear witness. But the memory of the morning of August 6th, 1945, must never fade. And since that fateful day, we have made choices that give us hope. The United States and Japan forged not only an alliance, but a friendship that has won far more for our people than we could ever claim through war. The nations of Europe built a union that replaced battlefields with bonds of commerce and democracy. Oppressed peoples and nations won liberation. An international community established institutions and treaties that worked to avoid war and aspired to restrict and roll back and ultimately eliminate the existence of nuclear weapons. Still, every act of aggression between nations, every act of terror and corruption and cruelty and oppression that we see around the world shows our work is never done. We must change our mindset about war itself to prevent conflict through diplomacy and strive to end conflicts after they've begun. To see our growing interdependence as a cause for peaceful cooperation and not violent competition. To define our nations not by our capacity to destroy, but by what we build. And perhaps above all, we must reimagine our connection to one another as members of one human race. We can learn. We can choose. We can tell our children a different story. One that describes a common humanity. One that makes war less likely and cruelty less easily accepted. We see these stories in the Hibakusha, the woman who forgave a pilot who flew the plane that dropped the atomic bomb because she recognized that what she really hated was war itself. The man who sought out families of Americans killed here because he believed their loss was equal to his own. My own nation's story began with simple words. All men are created equal and endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Realizing that ideal has never been easy, even within our own borders, even among our own citizens. But staying true to that story is worth the effort. It is an ideal to be strived for, an ideal that extends across continents and across oceans. The irreducible worth of every person, the insistence that every life is precious. That is the story that we all must tell. That is why we come to Hiroshima. So that we might think of people we love. The first smile from our children in the morning. The gentle touch from a spouse over the kitchen table. The comforting embrace of a parent. We can think of those things and know that those same precious moments took place here 71 years ago. Those who died, they are like us. The world was forever changed here. But today, the children of this city will go through their day in peace. What a precious thing that is. It is worth protecting and then extending to every child. That is the future we can choose. A future in which Hiroshima and Nagasaki are known not as the dawn of atomic warfare, but as the start of our own moral awakening.
確かに強いなことがだったね全部。It's even very hard to imagine that what happened at that time especially, and it's very painful even just to remember it as well. だから it was pretty good that Obama did this everything and say how he said about this everything what happened, and I'm glad that その後はアメリカと日本のリレーションシップはもっと良くになりました。でももちろん some people of Japan I think still can't forget about what happened that time. だから I appreciate everyone's like thinking the way they think, you know. It's appreciate for to like people who still likes America even after this, and it's like understandable that people who still doesn't like America after these things, even they did apologize and this kind of thing. Still, it's not enough, I think, to forget all that pain what Japan had that time. And it was pretty sad for me also to watch that Shinzo Abe-san was in this video too, because Shinzo Abe-san is not alive at this day as well. だから all people who died, I wish them peace. では今日のビデオはここまでです。最後まで見てくれてありがとう。次のビデオでお会いしましょう。またね。